In New York, London, Paris and Sydney, people spilled into the streets.
2 million people, by far the greatest in the city's history, filled the streets all day.
They cried and kissed and danced. This was VP Day, short for Victory in the Pacific. It was when Japan surrendered to the Allies, and 6 years of war finally came to an end.
Crowds before the White House await the announcement from the president that the Japs have surrendered unconditionally.
But World War II left behind a world completely changed. Up to 85 million people, or about 3% of the entire population, most of them civilians, were dead. Many more were injured. People lost their homes and family members. Around 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population were murdered by the Nazis during the Holocaust. In the years that followed the war, many Nazis were put to trial and punished for the war crimes they committed.
A young couple in East Berlin, separated from the bride's mother in the West, waved to the tearful woman.
The war had a huge effect on world politics. It left European countries that were once the richest and most powerful in the world defeated or weak. And territories in Asia and Africa that were ruled by European countries began to push for independence. Meanwhile, new superpowers were emerging. By the end of the war, the US and the Communist Soviet Union, or USSR, had the world's biggest armies. And while they were allies in the war, after the war, they became rivals.
Russia employed typical Cold War tactics on 2 occasions.
The tension between communist and democratic powers was known as the Cold War, and it had a huge effect on the world. Then there was the threat of nuclear weapons. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki may have sped up the end of the war, but it also sparked a race between the world's superpowers to build more and bigger weapons. Meanwhile, Australia was growing. Hundreds of thousands of people from European countries that had been hit hard by the war were invited to start a new life here. Like the US, Australia had avoided the worst damage and economic consequences of the war. But the government was convinced that the population needed to grow.
And without immigration, the future of the Australia we know will be both uneasy and brief. As a nation, we shall not survive.
And as well as new migrants, there were lots and lots of babies. Here in Australia and all around the world, there was a huge rise in births after the Second World War. It was partly because soldiers had returned home, but also because for the first time in decades, people felt confident that they'd be bringing kids up in a world that was safe. And it's why, even now, we call people born in that era baby boomers. The Second World War also resulted in this organisation.
11 members of the United Nations Security Council.
The United Nations was created in 1945 to try to bring the world together, improve people's standards of living, and most importantly, to avoid another world war. Today, that's still the hope of many, that the world will never again be torn apart by the sort of conflict that we saw 75 years ago.